Hello, and welcome to the Killing Zone podcast. If you've been here before, welcome back. If this is your first time, welcome. My name is Lindsay, and I like to dive into the strange and unknown. During this podcast, I will tell you stories of murder, deceit, and the macabre. Strap in and get ready for the Killing Zone. This episode is a re-recorded episode of a previous case that I have already covered. I want to make this the best podcast possible for all my listeners. So, I decided to re-record some past episodes with more gruesome details and a better sound quality. On today's episode, we will be discussing the story of Katherine Knight, the female Hannibal Lector of Australia, and how she murdered and intended to consume her boyfriend. Warning: some of the contents in this podcast are graphic and not suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised. It was the morning of March 1st, 2000, when the neighbor of John Charles Thomas Price noticed that his car was still parked in the driveway at 6 a.m. She thought it odd that he had not left for work yet. At his employer, they had thought the same thing. John was never late for work, and he always showed up. Both the neighbor and the employer went to the home of John to check on his well-being that morning. They had knocked on both the front door and his window and got no answer. When they checked the front door, they noticed there was blood, and that's when they decided to contact the police. What the police found in John's home that morning will both shock and terrify you. This is the story of Katherine Knight, the female Hannibal Lector of Australia. Katherine Mary Knight was born in Tenterfield, Australia on October 24th, 1955, to Barbara Rowan and Ken Knight. The small conservative town pronounced Katherine as a product of adultery, as Barbara had cheated on her husband with Ken. Barbara already had given birth to 4 boys from her marriage. Katherine did not have a great childhood. In fact, she had a very violent one. Her father was a violent alcoholic and would rape her mother several times a day. Katherine even claimed that she had been sexually assaulted by her father and half-brothers until the age of 11. Katherine's mother would even describe in great detail to Katherine about her sex life and how much she hated sex. Barbara would even sometimes force Katherine into sexual acts that she did not want to be a part of. During Katherine's years in school, she was known as the bully who would terrorize the smaller children. She even threatened one boy with a weapon and injured a teacher. She dropped out of the school at the young age of 15 to work at a clothing factory. She never learned how to read or write. Just a year after dropping out of school, she started her dream job. She worked at a slaughterhouse. While working at the slaughterhouse, she was cutting out the organs of animals. She was so obsessed with this job that she hung her set of butcher knives above her bed, just in case she ever wanted to use them. That she eventually did. Katherine had a total of 4 relationships in her life. The first was with David Kellett. Katherine met David at her job. He was close friends with her brother as well. Before David met Katherine, he had worked at the railway in Coffs Harbour, but was eventually let go due to his behavior and performance. This had stemmed from 2 violent incidents at the job, which made David turn to heavy drinking. The first incident happened when David watched his best friend die in a shunting accident, and the second incident was when he watched 6 children die when their bus was hit by a train. He had also attempted to rescue the occupants of that bus. After he was fired, he began working at the slaughterhouse with Katherine. In 1974, Katherine requested that her and David get married. On the day of their marriage, Katherine's mother gave the following advice to David: "You better watch this one, or she'll fucking kill you. stir her up the wrong way or do the wrong thing and you're fucked. Don't ever think of playing up on her. She'll fucking kill you. She's got something loose. She's got a screw loose somewhere. Katherine's mother was not wrong. On their wedding night, Katherine attempted to strangle David, just because he fell asleep after only having sexual intercourse 3 times. David's marriage to Katherine turned out to be a very violent marriage. On one occasion, when Katherine was pregnant with their first child, she burned all of David's clothing and shoes because he arrived home late from a darts tournament after reaching the finals. She also smacked him across the back of his head with a frying pan. This was when David left, fearing his life. He ended up at a neighbor's house where he collapsed due to a fractured skull. David did not press charges against Katherine during this incident. He stayed with her until May 1976. During this time, shortly after the birth of their first daughter, Melissa Ann, David had met another woman and moved to Queensland, Australia. He could no longer endure the abuse. Just the next day, Katherine was seen pushing Melissa in a stroller and throwing it from side to side, very violently. She was admitted to St. Elmo's Hospital in Tamworth for several weeks, being diagnosed with postnatal depression. Once Katherine was released from the hospital, she took her 2-month-old daughter and placed her on the railway tracks, just moments before the train was due to arrive. She then stole an axe and ran into town, threatening to kill several people. The baby was saved by a homeless man who'd been nearby the tracks only minutes before the train arrived. Police arrested Katherine and she was admitted back into St. Elmo's Hospital, where she was able to sign herself out because she had gotten better. I mean, here's my opinion on that. For somebody who takes their 2-month-old kid and places them on a train track and then goes on a violent rage in town with an axe, are they better enough to sign themselves out? I think that a lot of things that happened next could have been avoided if they would have done some more evaluations on Katherine. Just a few days after being released, Katherine got one of her knives and slashed the face of a woman, demanding this woman drive her to Queensland so that she could find David. The woman was able to escape when they had reached a service station. By the time the police had arrived, Katherine had taken a young boy hostage and was threatening to harm him. Police were able to disarm her and she was admitted into the Morsett Psychiatric Hospital. While there, she explained to the nurses that she had planned on killing the mechanic at the service station because he had fixed David's car and allowed him to leave. Then, she had planned on murdering both her husband David and his mother. When David got the news of what happened, he decided to leave his girlfriend, and him and his mother moved back to Aberdeen to be able to support Katherine. Katherine was released to the care of her husband and mother-in-law on August 9th, 1976, at which time they had all moved to Ipswich. Here, Katherine got a job at the Dinmore Meatworks. On March 6, 1980, Katherine gave birth to her second daughter, Natasha Marie. She only stayed with David until 1984. At this time, she moved back to Aberdeen to live with her parents until she was able to rent her own home in Muswellbrook, which was closer to the slaughterhouse that she worked at. The following year, in 1985, she faced a back injury on the job and ended up receiving a disability pension. The government also provided her with a housing commission back in Aberdeen. In 1986, Katherine met 38-year-old David Sanders. We will refer to him as Sanders, so there is no confusion between him and Katherine's ex-husband, David. Just a few months after Sanders met Katherine, he decided to move in with her and her daughters. He did, however, keep his apartment located in Scone. As with her past relationship, Katherine became violent towards Sanders. She would get jealous and question him about what he was doing while he was gone or while she was not around, and then she would throw him out of her home. He would go back to his apartment, but Katherine always showed up and begged him to come back. In May of 1987, she became very violent. Sanders had a 2-month-old dingo puppy. Katherine sat in front of him and slit the throat of the puppy, explaining to Saunders that if he had cheated on her, this is what would happen to him. Then she hit him in the head with a frying pan and knocked him unconscious. In June 1988, Katherine gave birth to her third daughter, Sarah. It was at this time that Sanders decided to put a deposit on a home for them. Using their workers' compensation payments, Katherine paid off the deposit just a year later in 1989. From there, she decorated the house from head to toe, leaving no space untouched with animal skins, skulls, horns, rusty animal traps, leather jackets, old boots, machetes, rakes, and pitchforks. Soon enough, Katherine got into a violent argument with Sanders and hit him in the face with an iron, and then stabbed him in the abdomen with a pair of scissors. He then ran back to his apartment in Scone, but later returned to Aberdeen, where he found all his clothes destroyed by Katherine. Fearing for his own life, Sanders went into hiding. Katherine had attempted to find him, but no one would tell her where he was, and several months after, Sanders returned so that he could see his daughter, but found out that Katherine had put out an apprehended violence order issued against Sanders because when he left, she had went to the police and told them that she feared him. So he wasn't able to see his daughter at that point. In 1991, Katherine became pregnant by her former 43-year-old co-worker, John Chillingworth. We will be referring to him as Chillingworth. She gave birth the following year to her first son, Eric. Their relationship only lasted 3 years before she left Chillingworth to have an affair with John Price. Before we get into Katherine's relationship with John Price, let's take a quick break and listen to the word from our sponsors. So we'll be right back. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to a word from our sponsors. Let's get back into the story of Katherine Knight. Katherine met John Charles Thomas Price in 1992. She had an affair with him. John was the father of 3 children when they started having the affair. John was cherished by everyone who knew him. His youngest daughter remained with his ex-wife, and his 2 older children lived with him. John was always aware of the violent reputation that Katherine had, but he still moved her into his home in 1995. His children loved her. He was making a lot of money working in the local mines, but they did have their violent arguments. Their relationship didn't turn violent, however, until Katherine had asked John to marry her, and he refused. Katherine would tell John's job that he was stealing things from the company and got him fired. John kicked her out of his home, but only a few months later, she was back and they were happy. However, he did refuse to let her move back in with him. All of John's friends and neighbors at this time noticed that Katherine became very violent. Early February 2000, Katherine and John got into an argument which culminated with Katherine attempting to stab John in his chest. At this time, he took out a restraining order against Katherine. This was in an attempt to keep his children safe. Towards the end of the month, he had expressed to his neighbors and coworkers that he was worried about his safety. He even told them that if he were to go missing, that they should investigate Katherine. He feared that she was going to kill him. Unfortunately, his feelings would be right. It was February 29th, 2000 when John returned home from work. He checked in with his neighbors and went to bed by 11 p.m. Shortly after John had went to bed, Katherine came over. She made herself dinner, watched TV, took a shower, and went upstairs where John was sleeping. She woke John up and they had sex twice before John went back to bed. Just as John fell back asleep, Katherine took a butcher knife she had next to the bed and stabbed John 37 times. John had awoken during this attack and attempted to fight her off, but could not. He even attempted to make it to the front door, leaving a trail of blood going down the stairs and leaving some blood on the doorknob on the front door. Katherine dragged John's body into the living room, skinned him, and hung his body from a meat hook. She then decapitated him and cut him up into small pieces. She used these pieces to cook into a dish with potato, pumpkin, beets, zucchini, cabbage, squash, and gravy. She made a plate for herself, but investigators would find later that half the plate had been discarded because she could not finish her meal. She then took a large amount of sleeping pills and fell asleep in the upstairs bedroom. The next morning, John's co-workers and neighbors had noticed that he had not made it to work. They heeded his warning and checked out the exterior of his home when they noticed blood on the front door. They contacted the police. When the police arrived, they came upon a gruesome crime scene left by Katherine, and they detained the comatose Katherine. When she woke, she claimed to have no memory and had no clue about what happened the night before. In the kitchen, police found John's head boiling in a pot of vegetables on the stove. On the table, they found 2 full plates of food, each labeled with John's children's names. Katherine had planned on serving this to his children. Katherine even hung John's skin across the doorway into the kitchen. The police discovered this to be his skin when they went to move it like a curtain and pulled their arm back with blood covering it. Katherine even left a note that was stained in blood and flesh. The note read, "Time got you back, Jonathan, for raping my daughter. You to Beck for Ross. For little John, now play with little John's dick, John Price." This note was written to John's children. Despite Katherine saying that she had no memory about what had happened that night, Katherine was charged with the murder of John Charles Thomas Price. In October 2001, Katherine's trial began, but did not last very long for unclear reasons. Katherine ended up changing her plea from not guilty to guilty, and the judge adjourned the case without testimony. She was sent to the prison that same day, and the judge sentenced her to life in prison and stated that she should never be released. For the first time in history, a woman in Australia was given a life sentence without parole. To this day, Katherine still claims that she is innocent and refuses to accept responsibility for her actions. Katherine has appealed her sentence before, and it has been denied almost immediately. She is still serving her life sentence in the Silverwater Women's Correctional Center. Killers, you should always pay attention to red flags during a relationship. As we learned, Katherine has many red flags. I feel like that if John had attempted not to let her in so many times, he would still be alive today. So I say, be careful out there in this dating world. Pay attention to the people you have around you. If you spot a dangerous red flag, get yourself out of there. The one person could end up being the end of you. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Killing Zone. I hope you return to listen to the next episode of this podcast. This is Lindsay signing off. Stay healthy and stay happy, killers.